Hi, you're listening to You Betta THiNK, sponsored by Poetess Chanelle and hosted by Cass.
Welcome to this month's episode of You Better Think, hosted by Cass Allen and sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy. We're excited to be here again, joining you all to have some intellectual play, conversation where we can engage, perhaps learn some things, relax a little bit, and have a little smile. I'm excited to bring you this month's theme, which is knowledge of self. I'm also thrilled to have our special guest with us this week, who is the poetess Chanelle. I have no one on the show but her this week, but I can guarantee you that you'll be very excited and very filled. We are going to explore her mind on the subject and engage in her poetry. Without further ado, I'm going to get into our segment, so let's go.
Hi, you're listening to You Betta THiNK, sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy and hosted by Cass.
Hey everybody, this week we're talking about knowledge of self, and I'm going to get real up and close and personal with you. A lot of us out here struggle to know self. We struggle to be self. We struggle in all kinds of ways when it comes to self. Many of us walk out in the streets with this big smile on our faces, beating our chests, always wanting to give our best to the world. We're taught never let them see you sweat, never let them see you cry, do or die, put on your best face. And then we're going through the most incredibly hardship equated things in our lives, and we're still smiling, because we're trained to pretend nothing's wrong. Don't let people see you in a bad mood. Bad moods attract bad moods. People don't want to be around a sappy Sally. Y'all know what I'm saying here. We are not trained to be ourselves. We are trained to show a happy version of ourselves. If we're in our own space depressed, everybody tries to snap us out of it. Don't feel that way. Don't be unhappy. Don't be angry. XYZ. If you stay there longer than people think you should stay there, they begin to avoid you. As you explore that side of you that's painful, people have a hard time being around you. They tell you even, come out of it. Girl, don't be a Debbie Downer. Hey man, come on, let's go out. Get out of that rough. And of course, there are times where we need to be pulled out of those things. But there are also times where we need to spend time with self and feel those emotions so we can understand what they feel like. I think a lot of people go through emotions. Well, I won't say a lot. I'll say several to be fair, because I do not have any numbers. A lot of people face things in their lives where they're going to be challenged. And a lot of times we face emotions for the first time and we don't even understand how to deal with them because we don't have an understanding of self. I personally used to be the type of person that was very, very quiet. I was always very agreeable. I always got along with everybody. I was known as the cool person. Cass don't bother nobody. Cass get along with everybody. Cass is cool, right? I was always happy, get along, want everybody to be happy, doing whatever I can to make sure everybody in my environment is good. You dig? Whether they needed 4 hours on the phone, a little cash, a place to stay, food, whatever, pot, liquor. There are many, many people out there who will testify that this was my life for many, many years. An open door, disc jockeying. You could come in my house no matter who you were, no matter where you came from, no matter who you came with. Cass always had an open door. I didn't judge people. Cass had the devil and the angel sitting at the same table. You understand what I'm saying? The person at this end of the table was my minister friend. The person at that end of the table was the person who committed a murder. And don't give me that birds of a feather crap. We'll get to that on another show. the point here is I've always had a very, very open heart. Very, very, very open heart. And in having that open heart, I still maintain my own hobbies, if you will. I still DJ'd, I still worked a full job, I still did my art, all the things I do now. But in a different kind of way. I did those things when I felt I had time for them. After I finished doing for everybody else. I did those things as therapy when I was down from everything else. Sometimes I did those things to keep me going when I was losing it from everything else. Sometimes I did those things mindlessly and couldn't create no matter how hard I tried because myself was not present. All of those things I mentioned to you that I was doing, but I wasn't there.
Hi, you're listening to You Betta THiNK, sponsored by Born Gypsy and hosted by Cass.
Hey everybody, again, thank you for joining us for this month's episode of You Betta THiNK. Again, the wonderful Poetess Chanelle is joining us to discuss the knowledge of self. We begin by presenting one of her amazing pieces. Poetess Chanelle, please come to the mic and warm the audience as you always do each week. Before you begin, I'd like to thank you officially for joining me as the special guest this week, and I'm looking forward to talking to you after you finish the poem. So let's rock this.
This poem is called Knowledge of Self. Knowledge of self begins with exposing your innermost parts. One day I looked in the mirror and realized I had so many scars. Deep rooted from the past, starting from childhood, the Most High let me know that He would be the one to resolve it. But He said it would take time because the pain is so deep rooted. Exposure is the best solution. I didn't know if I could do it. Getting to the root of it was the hardest part. I covered up my pain with MAC and Sephora to hide so many scars. Tears and pain of many failed relationships revisited me. This knowledge of self thing was no easy journey. Healing oneself, you cannot do it alone. You need that supernatural power from the Most High that's up above. Knowledge of self, I like where it's taking me, giving the world the best version of the woman I am destined to be. Knowledge of self, that's not the end but the beginning of it all. That's why I evaluate myself every day so that I do not become absorbed. Absorbed with negativity leads to self-destruction. This knowledge of self thing is the beginning of reconstruction. Seeking knowledge about oneself is no easy task. The good, the bad, the ugly lies beneath a mask. A mask that's put out for the public to see, but alone you're hurting internally. Still processing, you're never done. Knowledge of self is something you'll never overcome.
Hi, you're listening to You Betta THiNK, sponsored by Born Gypsy and hosted by Cass.
Good evening, Chanelle.
Good evening, Cass. How are you?
I'm doing well, and yourself?
I'm doing great.
Thank you for joining us today on this episode of You Betta THiNK. It's truly a pleasure to have you here in the studio after spending so many months with you outside of the studio, providing our listeners with all those great poems of yours.
You know, I'm honored. I'm flattered that people like my work. I'm really humbled by that, and it makes me smile.
Well, you've got us smiling too. A lot of your work explores areas of ourselves that many of us don't usually get into on the level that you do, which brings us to today's theme, which is knowledge of self. Thank you for joining us today as our special guest and sharing in some words with us, not only through your poem, which you just read to us, which was amazing, but providing us with more insight behind that poem. I'd like to start out with, like I said, thanking you for your amazing work that you deliver to us every month. As I've always said, you have a way of speaking a truth that's raw and fresh, and it really gets through to people. Starting with that, I'd like you to talk about what inspired you when you wrote Knowledge of Self for this month's episode.
Knowledge of self is about evolution of myself, of the things that I have gone through, the things that have happened to me. And it's about growth and knowing, getting to know yourself. I feel like sometimes life is so in a hurry. You're in different relationships. You're running. You don't really know who you are. And sometimes in relationships, we get lost. We lose ourselves. And that's what happened to me. And once I got out of a particular relationship and the pandemic hit, I had to really look at myself. It made me look at myself. It forced me to look at myself because I was spending time alone. And, it just made me realize I had a lot of healing to do. I had a lot of self-introspection. I had a lot of things that I needed to work on from my past that I had buried for a very long time. And it was coming to the surface, rearing its ugly head.
Right.
So I had to deal with these issues with the help. God has helped me navigate through a lot of my issues that I had buried for so long. It was very enlightening. This has been a very enlightening 2 years for me.
Thank you for that. You speak of, you just bring up an excellent point, which I always give homage to, the strengths of the universe. I know everybody has their own different beliefs. Some people believe in God. Some people believe in multiple, whatever. I'm going to speak from the standpoint of what source inspires you so that we can be inclusive of all people, whatever makes you feel like you're here, your purpose. We speak of knowledge of self. Do you think self is that something that we can learn on our own from your experience, or do you think like a different power, a higher power has to partake in that journey for us? Like when you're born, a lot of people say they don't know what they're going to do, they don't know what they want to be. Do you think a person can just automatically know themselves, or you have to do things to find yourself? Like you mentioned, you get into relationships and you're not into self. What is it? What did self mean to you? Like having knowledge of self.
Knowledge of self means evaluating your attitude, evaluating the things that are wrong about you, and being able to admit that you have things about yourself that are not nice. And you have to confront these things, and as a person, if you want to improve yourself, you have to change.
Amen.
And there was some things about myself that were not nice, and I had to take responsibility for that. And I didn't do it alone. I prayed a lot. I asked for help from God, and He answered. And because of Him, I am evolving into the person that He will want me to be. A positive person that will have a positive influence on others.
Right. And in that knowledge of self and working to have a positive influence on others, are there times that you feel like you still feel like you're lost at times, or do you think that's something we have to work hard to always keep ourselves focused on ourselves so we don't feel lost?
We have to keep focusing on ourselves, and we have to keep growing. Okay, you never stop learning about yourself, and you never stop growing. You have never arrived. It's always a process. And that's what I'm learning also. That you have to keep growing as a person. You have to keep learning things as a person about yourself. Because how are you gonna, okay, say if you want to be in a relationship, how are you gonna be in a relationship and you still have things in yourself that is still not right, that you have not acknowledged? You know? So it's like knowledge of self is introspection.
Yes.
Evaluation. Okay? And sometimes you have to put your body under subjection, meaning you have to deprive yourself from certain things,
right,
in order for you to grow. So that's what I believe knowledge of self means. And it also means knowing what you're not going to tolerate and what you will tolerate and what you like and what you don't like, no matter what anybody says.
You bring some great points up about knowing yourself, boundaries, etc. Yet, and I'm going to speak to the psychological aspect of this, because I do know you have a skill set in education and psychological background. So why do you think that so many people, when we all know this, and we all go in a relationship and we get out and then we find ourselves and then we go into another relationship and repeat that same behavior, after we polish ourselves, find ourselves, we jump in and lose ourselves again? What is it about being in relationships that often create that loss of self, you think?
I think it's because you're trying to fit the mold of that person. You're really not being yourself. Because you want that person to like you. You don't, and especially if you really like this person, so you're gonna try to fit. You're just gonna try to you please them like a people pleaser, like.
Right.
And then it doesn't work out. 2 years later, you wonder why you guys are not together.
Right.
You know, the problem I think with relationships is that people, they're not themselves. It's like they come in trying to be somebody else. They're not 100% themselves. And then the real self comes out, right?
Right, eventually.
6 months later.
Amen.
And this person is like, yo, what?
Who are you?
Who are you? Like, is that your eyes? Are those your eyes? No.
That's true. You really don't like horror movies?
Exactly. So it's like, I have done that. I have done that in the past. Like,
yes.
I have been like, okay, you want me to get blonde hair? You know, okay, boo. You know, okay, I want you to get blue streaks in your hair. Okay. And I didn't even want that.
Right.
But I did it to please him.
Right.
I did it to please him.
Right.
And you know what? It didn't even work out. All of that for what?
And that's the interesting point that you make here. Often when we lose self, we end up alone.
Yep.
And lost. That's the whole thing that happens. Because
exactly.
we have not invested self. And perhaps at the end of the day, the person does realize that it's not a whole person there. Even though you usually don't have that discussion in the end. Maybe that's part of it.
Yeah.
Because we can pick up on each other's energies. I've been around people and known they were lying just from sensing what they're doing without any kind of empirical evidence.
Exactly.
So maybe there is something in there in our masking that, even though it's not discussed, creates that hole, and that other person is actually responding to it.
Yeah, the real self is going to leak out eventually.
Because I find the women that are themselves, and I speak freely about my sexuality, I'm turned on to women. And the ones that turn me on are the ones who are honest.
Right. That is correct.
So how do you feel about that? Have you met anybody that you felt was completely themselves in a relationship? Or is it usually by the time you're breaking up, they're saying things you didn't know they felt? Like, well, the passive-aggressive types that aren't that become themselves when they're angry.
I was in a relationship on and off for 10 years with a person that they were very passive aggressive. It's like when they're angry, everything would come out. And I wasted a lot of time when I knew that this person, I should have been dumped this person, okay? But a lot of times we stay in relationships because we think things are going to change.
You just made an excellent point.
So,
some people are only themselves when they're angry.
Yeah.
So when this person wasn't angry, did you always wonder, were they being honest after you would find out they were brutally honest when they're more agitated?
After a while, I knew it wasn't real anymore, and that's why I stepped off.
And did you feel like this person wasn't being themselves?
No, they were fake. They were a lie. You know, I won't doubt the love that was there, but a lot of it, the personality and the traits were phony. I found out, and it was very, very sad. It was a very sad situation, on and off for 10 years. Come on, I could have been with somebody else.
And I can hear from the way you speak, you obviously have a sense of yourself. Do you find, like, throughout your life as you've grown, you've changed the way that you approach relationships, whether it be a loving one or friendship, or
Definitely,
because of your knowledge of self creates different types of boundaries?
Definitely. Like, I'm a total different person when it comes to friendships and relationships. Right now, I'm not in a relationship, and I haven't been for a while. Now, friendships, this is no longer a circle. I don't have a circle of friends. It's like a dot, a line, a triangle, a rectangle.
When we say circle, it's like circus.
Right. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't have a lot of friends because of certain things. If I see something shady, I'm just going to cut you off. You're just not going to hear from me. Period. I'm not going to be sitting here telling grown people how to behave and how to treat a friend. You almost 50-something years old, 40-something years old, you don't know how to be a friend to somebody?
Amen.
That's ridiculous. I'm not doing it.
And you say that like you've changed. So there was a time you did let people in that didn't deserve a position, correct?
Yes, I did. Yes, I have. I have done that in the past and got burnt.
And at that time, was there a sense of self, or you speak like you learned some things about yourself and created boundaries as a result?
Yes, I have. I had to, because people were really trying to take advantage of my kindness.
And in this finding yourself and developing to this moment where you say, I've had enough. That's the self I guess I'm trying to explore. When I think a lot of us know ourselves, but we don't own it sometimes. Because when someone's hurting us, we know what the pain feels like. We know we're being hurt, and we know we don't want it anymore. So we have the sense of what bothers us, what we don't like.
Yes,
it's a matter, in my opinion, humbly, of acting on those feelings. Being able to say, I know this hurts, and I'm not going to let it happen again.
You have to set boundaries, because if you don't, people will run all over you. And I'm not having it. So guess what? That's why my friends, I don't have a lot of friends. I don't. You know, and whoever tries, there are people that try to be my friend all the time. Like, people
I'm not surprised. You're gorgeous.
To be my friend, but you know, you just can't be my friend. You have to earn my friendship, because I am a good friend. I am a good friend. I'm not here say I'm perfect, but I'm down for my friends. You know, loyal. Okay, loyalty is important, and I haven't always been loyal.
Do you feel like at this point in your life, without going into your age or anything, or dating you, that you are comfortable being yourself, your true self, in the company of those you care about?
Yes.
That's wonderful, because a lot of people are not.
Yeah, I'm me. Whoever don't like it, I'm sorry for you. You ain't got to be around me, but I am going to be who I am.
You heard it, ladies and gentlemen. She's sorry for you.
For real.
You heard it here on You Better Think. We're here tonight in the presence of Poetess Chanelle, enjoying this episode of You Better Think. The topic tonight is knowledge of self, and we're being graced in the studio with one of these beautiful spirits of our world named Poetess Chanelle. We'll be right back.
Hi, you're listening to You Better Think, sponsored by Born Gypsy, hosted by Cass Allen.
You've been listening to You Better Think, hosted by Cass Allen, sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy. Welcome back. For those of you who are just joining us, we're in the studio live with the Poetess Chanelle. And let me correct that for you people. Her name is Chanelle, not Chanel. So let's all get it right moving forward. We're in the studio with Poetess Chanelle discussing the knowledge of self. She graces us with her presence every month and drops some poetic words for us regarding the themes that we bring to you from ourselves, including our network of friends and family. As I said, this week we're discussing the knowledge of self. You've been graced with one of the, lovely written words of Chanelle, and now you're being graced with a voice. We're getting to know her this week and finding out who's behind all this beautiful work. Chanelle, thank you for joining us in the studio again.
No problem.
As we go into the next part of this, I'd like to get a little deeper inside of you and provide our listeners with the opportunity to get to experience some of what I experience each day, because I'm graced, ladies and gentlemen, to have her as a partner in our company, and she does a lot by way of operations to help us sustain and even to keep the show on the air. And we're really excited to have her here so that you all can be exposed to some of her information, because she's a very positive and good force, and we want to share her with you. So let's get to know a little bit more about Poetess Chanelle. Let's start by talking about where you're from, guy.
Okay, I was born and raised in East New York, Brooklyn, and my mom is Haitian American and my dad is Guyanese. And I grew up in East New York all my life, and it was pretty rough.
Brooklyn in the house.
Brooklyn. And
for those who are listening that don't know their demographics, it's Brooklyn, New York.
Brooklyn, New York. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York all my life, and it was a pretty rough neighborhood, especially as a kid coming up in the 80s, with the crack epidemic, and having to walk to school and see dead bodies on the corner and crack vials and things of that nature. But I had a working mother who worked every day. She works in the Board of Education, and my father also was like a banker.
Cool.
So I came from parents who worked every day and worked hard, and they instilled in my brother and I that we had to go to school. And that was a very important thing in my household. We had to go to school every day, sick or not. I remember I threw up. My mother was like, I don't care. I'm going to school. I said, Mom,
take
please.
this bag with you.
Oh, man. And, that was important for my mom and dad, for us to finish school. And especially my father, he was really strict. Coming from that kind of background, he was so strict. It was like I couldn't wear no nail polish or nothing until I was like 14. And I was like, I want nail polish.
This is an excellent point, if I may join you here. You just spoke of a time in your life where your parents, let's say, were being disciplining you.
Right.
There were things you wanted to do that you weren't allowed to do.
Exactly.
Did you feel at that point rebellious, like they were not allowing you to be yourself? Did you ever voice that?
Yes, and I got slapped upside the head. And it's all good. But I did voice my opinion because I was mad. I couldn't do what my friends were doing. I wanted to go to the movies. You can't go to the movies. Can't do this. Can't do that. Can't do it. I'm like, I was so aggravated. But guess what? When I grew up, I realized I'm glad that they did that.
Amen.
Because I probably would have been really somewhere else.
When you were growing up, and let's say with this school, high school, junior high, whatever, did you feel like many children have experienced peer pressure to do things you did not want to do? Or were you pretty much the type of kid who owned yourself regardless of your environment?
Well, as a kid, I never really fit in, especially in junior high school. I never really fit in because I guess I was a nerd or geek, whatever you want to call it. And it just never, I just was always a geek. They would call me a geek or a nerd. But I was always different. I was quiet. I was to myself. I always been like that. You know, I never had no whole group of friends coming to the house and all of that. Had like 1 or 2 friends that would come to the house. I was never that type of child.
And were you comfortable by yourself? Did you enjoy your own company? Can you remember that?
Yes, I would read a lot. Strawberry shortcake.
That explains
like
this poetic side of you, huh? The written word.
Yes.
What inspired you to write poetry?
It was just, I was home one day and I just started writing. I just started writing because I just was thinking about my past experiences and I just started writing about them.
Did you start writing in your younger years, or has this been recent?
The poetry?
Yes.
Recent. Writing? No. Because I used to write for my high school paper.
So, have you always loved to write? Have you always found, do you feel like that's a part of you that has to be there? You know, like people say your passions, to me that's a sense of self as well, knowing something you need to create.
That's always been a part of me. Writing has always been a part of my life, especially in high school, because I used to write for the school paper. And I used to have like these 2 teachers that would press me about my writing. They would say, come on, you know, come on, Chanelle, like, you can do better than this. I want you to hone in on your senses. Like one of my teachers, I'm not going to say his name, but he really inspired me to write with my feelings. Descriptive writing. Okay? So the person could, when you're writing, the person could be there with you. You know, he always encouraged me to write like that.
And I know that since you've been writing for You Betta THiNK, I've made the comment across the episodes that you write where you touch people. I feel like we are there with you. So I can definitely attest to that statement that you just made, that whatever he instilled in you, it worked, because we're getting it.
Okay, that's what I want. I want people to get it, and I want people to say, you know what, I can relate to that. That's what I want.
And let's touch on something right now. I'm working on a project, a film named The Rendezvous. And a part of that film is about people connecting without looks. You know, what you just said made me think of that you want people to enjoy your writing. I find that with some people, self becomes physical, and they make decisions based on what they see instead of what a person is. Do you find in your life, and ladies and gentlemen, I know you have to visualize this, but Poetess Chanelle is very attractive. So I can imagine there could be an instance where she can struggle with her beauty versus her character, because I know how people operate in this world, to preface what I'm about to ask her. So, Poetess Chanelle, have you had instances where you feel that you're trying to connect with people yourself, but they're looking at your outside and not seeing yourself? And if you have, can you just give us one example and what it feels like to be in that situation, and how, if you have faced it, what you feel people need to benefit from not being like that? If my 3-part question made any sense to you, madam.
Okay. I would like for you to slow down just a little bit.
I do get a little excited
yes, you
sometimes.
are excited.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, like...
I do think. I do what I said. You better think.
Okay. What is the first question again? You are going a little bit too fast, Cass. Okay.
Okay, let's slow it down for the lady, Poetess Chanelle. I apologize to the entire audience. I can sum this up and take it from calculus down to simplicity.
Okay, thank you.
Is that where we go?
Yes.
Okay. When you as a woman who is attractive, my eyes work. You're an attractive woman.
Okay.
I know what it's like for people to be attractive, and sometimes people don't take your work seriously because they're so enthralled with your looks. As I said, ladies and gentlemen, I will reiterate, Poetess Chanelle is an attractive woman. We all know what happens to attractive women. Sometimes people chase your outside, and they don't give you the opportunity to explore your inside. And I'm asking her tonight, especially as a writer and someone who's trying to communicate messages on a mass level, does her looks interfere sometimes with what she's trying to do?
This is why I don't really show my face. That's why I don't really show how, I don't put emphasis on how I look, because I want people to know. Look at my work. Look at my work. What is my message saying? What are you getting from this poem? Not about how I look. Because like I always say, looks could go. Looks could fade away. Look at the message that I'm trying to deliver in my poetry. What is it saying to you? How does it make you feel? Do you know somebody in that particular situation? That's what I want. Because like I said, looks are fleeting.
And ladies and gentlemen, let the record be known, Poetess Chanelle was hired without a face. We read her work and we thought it was amazing. It did not matter what she looks like. What's important is that the message is delivered to you all. And that's a word. And a word doesn't have a face. Unfortunately, there are people out here who do only hire based on looks.
Exactly.
But I won't digress, because tonight we're talking about knowledge of self. And we're with the Poetess Chanelle on You Betta THiNK. We'll be right back.
Hi, you're listening to You Betta THiNK, sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy and hosted by Cass Allen.
Hello, everyone out there in electronic land. Thank you for joining us tonight for this month's episode of You Betta THiNK, hosted by Cass Allen, sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy. For those of you who are just joining us again, thank you. And those of you who've been here with us, I know you're having a great time listening to the Poetess Chanelle. Let us into her life a little bit and get to know a little bit more about her. We've been graced to get to know something about her as she sends us her messages every month through her poetry. And some of you have written in and you've made it very clear that you want to hear her every month. And so you're getting her because she's gracing us with her poetry, as she did today. Getting back to knowledge of self. As you all heard, as she expressed that poem to us, one of the lines that particularly stuck with me was about exposure. Exposure, being open, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, fragile, looking inside. You can't find yourself unless you look. Would you agree with that, Chanelle?
That's right. You must look. You must evaluate. And it might not be, it's going to hurt. Especially if the truth is ugly.
Do you think it's possible to look at your whole life and not find anything wrong with it?
No. Because nobody's perfect. If you look at your life and you find absolutely nothing wrong with it, there's an ego issue going on.
That's a great point. And some people often get self mixed up with ego and get too involved in self. Selfishness versus selflessness. I find they're both... there's a balance. Sometimes you have to be selfish. Sometimes you have to say no.
Yes.
Do you think that in being yourself, that there's a way to be yourself in a relationship? What are people missing that they can't be together and be themselves?
They're missing communication, honesty. I think that's the problem. The communication is what's missing. Lack of communication is what's missing. Miscommunication is the problem.
Finding somebody you can talk to about anything.
Yes, I feel like you should be able to talk to your partner about everything.
Where you feel like a kid in their presence.
Right.
Open,
honest,
comfortable.
No matter what the reaction. Like, you should be able to say whatever. It's especially you're grown, you should be able to communicate what it is that you really want, how you really feel, and what you're not going to tolerate and what you will tolerate.
No matter the relationship.
No matter what.
Like with family, people struggle a lot because they have the same DNA. You let them kick you in the head.
Yeah.
When you wouldn't let another person pinch you just because you have the same last name.
Exactly.
What do you recommend for people, like, when it comes to their family? People often feel guilty and do things they wouldn't do for anyone else, which is a true loss of self to some degree. Would you agree?
I agree that there are family members that will run all over you, stomp on you, talk about you like a dog, and then come ask you for money. Yes, I know about that. And I feel like with family, you definitely have to stand your ground with certain family members, especially the ones that try to take advantage of you. You have to stand your ground. I mean, you can stand your ground without cursing. You can stand your ground without yelling.
Amen.
You know, you can just express to them, look, I feel like you're taking advantage of me. Like, enough is enough. I'm not going to stand for that. Like, you treat me, you make me feel bad when you do such and such. And then you let the person know how they make you feel. And that should be the end of it. And if not, then maybe you need to distance yourself from that particular family member.
And thank you for that, Chanelle. I would like to ask you, for those people out here who are struggling to find themselves or feel lost, that might be listening today, because, like I said, I know there are people out there who found energies from your words. What would you recommend for a person who feels like they don't know how to find themselves? Like, recommend 2 or 3 things that person might want to do on a journey to get to that point that you are at today.
Okay. Let me just start out by saying that this is, my opinion and what I think. If you want to find yourself, number 1, you need to be alone. You need to spend time alone. You need to take walks alone. You need to, number 2, pray. Prayer helps because it opens the doors for answers that you've been looking for. Things that you don't understand about yourself can be revealed to you through prayer. Okay?
Amen.
Number 3, you have to find something that you like doing. Alone. Emphasizing alone. Find something that you like to do alone. My thing was writing. You could be a runner. You could like to draw. Find something that you like to do alone.
That's me.
And those are the 3 things.
Thank you, Poetess Chanelle.
No problem.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to this magical interview without me having to ask you, related to knowledge of self? If there's anything you'd like to offer that I did not cover, please.
I just want to say, if you're trying to find yourself, be patient with yourself. Don't beat yourself up when the answers are not coming fast enough. Let it flow. Let the process flow naturally, and everything will fall into place.
Amen. You heard it here, everyone. The Poetess Chanelle, not just delivering her written words to you through her vocal sensation, but also enlightening you on how she got to the core of herself, how she found herself as she excavates, and how she reminds us all that even though you're looking for yourself, be prepared for that journey to be everlasting. Poetess Chanelle, again, I would love to thank you for coming into the studio today and taking time to share not only your works but your words from your heart. I hope you can join us again next month, where our episode will be Family Ties. We're hoping that you can write a little words for us. Thank you again for being here.
No problem. And I thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this episode of You Betta THiNK, hosted by Cass Allen, sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy. Speaking of knowledge of self, as many of you know, I dibble and dabble in music. I have a CD that I produce named The Core of Self. So we're going to take a commercial break while you listen to one of my tracks and enjoy yourselves. You're listening to You Better Think, hosted by Cass Allen, sponsored by Bullhorn Gypsy. Today we've had the pleasure to spend some time with the poetess Chanelle, speaking on the knowledge of self. I have a big surprise for her as well as all of you. So brace yourself, Chanelle. Many of you know that Chanelle is a poet. Not only can she write that word, and not only can she speak that word, but she can flow that word. I had the pleasure to be working on a movie named The Rendezvous, where I'm actually one of the star characters. And it's about some of the things we talked about today, how looks don't matter, and whether or not the past matters, and the matters of the heart. It's about two people who go on a blind date. One can fully see the other, but the other cannot. And how far they're willing to take that relationship to get to know each other. I approached the poetess Chanelle and I asked her to write the song for the soundtrack, The Rendezvous. And I also asked her to sing it a cappella. That's right, you heard me here tonight. I asked her to sing it a cappella. We are gracing you with the lovely voice of the poetess Chanelle, singing a cappella theme song of the movie being released in 2023 under Bullhorn Gypsy Productions, named The Rendezvous. Get ready, people.
Rendezvous, rendezvous, rendezvous. Feels so good when I think of you. When I look at you, my dreams come true. Rendezvous, rendezvous. Who knew it was you to change my life? I am so satisfied. Fell in love. Who knew? Rendezvous, rendezvous. Rendezvous. Feels so good when I think of you. When I look at you, my dreams come true. Rendezvous. Rendezvous. Ooh. Knew it was you to change my life. I am so satisfied. Fell in love. Who knew it was a rendezvous?
All I can say to the poetess Chanelle is you just handed us grace. I love your voice. Thank you for gifting us with the Rendezvous theme song.
Hi, you're listening to You Better Think, sponsored by Born Gypsy and hosted by Cass Allen.
Y'all know how I like to do. We're going to go into some of my commentary that gets you all thinking. Remember, don't be a zombie. Think. You always there. No matter what, you're always there. I've always had a pretty decent job with direction when I'm on my path. So, to the world, I got this knowledge of self. The stories I've shared with you all on previous shows about my brain, people on fleek about my brain. Cass got this brain, Cass is very given to the world. Everybody's always proud of Cass for the most part. Because Cass got it going on in the head. To people. Cass can reinvent herself in seconds. Cass can do anything she wants. Cass can work in all kinds of fields. Cass take a piece of fish and a bottle of wine and invite the whole world in. But ask all of these people who I was, who I really was. There are people today that say, you know what, I realize I never knew you. They say I spend so much time talking, I realize you never talked because you were always listening. You were always being a therapist for all of us. You were always there. Then something happened to me in my life and I needed something that I realized that I did not have. I needed myself to fight a battle. And I began to grope at myself, clutching for Cass, looking for Cass. Because Cass was always cool. Cass didn't get down and no bullshit, basically. But then Cass met bullshit. And I didn't know how to deal with it because I didn't know myself. I realized that I had given so much and spent so much time trying to make sure that the world was happy around me that I didn't take that time to truly take care of myself. Even though I loved myself, made sure I had my good job, my whatever you want to add to that. I wasn't in a spiritual me except from the point of giving me to others. But I didn't know what I was given. In that moment, I realized I'm giving DJ and I'm giving hugs, I'm giving this, I'm giving that, but I'm not giving me. From the standpoint of allowing people to get inside of me and see what makes me tick and what my dreams and aspirations are and what makes me happy and what makes me sad. I realized that every holiday when it's time to give gifts, the majority of the people in my life don't know what to give me. And I realized it's because they don't know me. They don't know what I love. They don't know what I want. Because they got so used to coming And it's not because they were takers. Don't get me wrong. It's just that I gave so much love. Quite frankly, I think people enjoyed it. And so much. And I was so happy doing it that we got lost in Cass Allen.
Hi, you're listening to You Better Think, sponsored by Born Gypsy and hosted by Cass Allen. You better think.
You know, and when you face that day and when you're in that space where you have to accept, your own truth, which I happily do. And as I said, I will give you all testimony because that's what we're supposed to do, share so someone else can have an easier time who reaches this path. But nevertheless, there was a lot of pain in that discovery. Absolutely, I went all the way down, naked as I needed to be. And in that time, I realized that I truly had lost my true connection to that thing I call the source. Even though I've always been aware, as you heard, on a high level of giving and how we're all connected and being loving, I forgot that it's not my job to do these things. It's not my job to make sure everybody's okay. It's my job to make sure I serve the source. If you all believe in the source, you good. You don't need me. And that's what I had to realize. I'm not here to take care of the world. And I don't have to feel guilty for not taking care of the world. What I felt guilty for was not having my relationship with God. Not being my true self. Not sitting still and letting God say, Cass, this is what I need you to do. Not what I thought I was supposed to do because I had this flower child heart. And I tell this tale in testimony of our topic, knowledge of self, to say, even when you think you know yourself, dig a little deeper.
You're listening to You Better Think, sponsored by Born Gypsy and hosted by Cass Allen. You better think. Don't be a zombie. Whether it's drama or comedy, you better think.